Have you ever noticed how obsessed we are with generational labels? Boomers ruined the economy. Millennials killed napkins. Gen Z can't stop staring at their phones. But sitting quietly in the middle is a generation that almost nobody talks about. Generation X. Born between the early 1960s and mid 1980s. They're the coworker who gets everything done without asking for recognition. The parent who sacrificed for their family but never needed applause. The people who helped build the internet we all depend on. Yet somehow managed to stay out of the spotlight. And here's what makes them fascinating. More than anything else, Gen X was shaped by independence. They were the generation of latchkey kids. Imagine it's 1978. You're 8 years old. The school bus drops you off. You walk home alone, unlock the front door with the key hanging around your neck, and step into an empty house. No parents. No babysitter. No smartphone. No way to instantly contact anyone. Just silence. You pour yourself a bowl of cereal, turn on the television, and wait for your parents to come home. For millions of children, this wasn't unusual. It was normal. By the late 1980s, roughly 7 million children regularly spent hours unsupervised after school. And without realizing it, they were learning a powerful lesson. Nobody is coming to rescue you. Figure it out yourself. That experience shaped the way they think. They learned that actions have consequences. You couldn't text your parents for advice. You couldn't Google a solution. You made decisions, and then you dealt with whatever happened next. When your parents finally came home, discipline wasn't a negotiation. You broke the rules, you faced the consequences. Simple. That kind of environment teaches a child to think ahead, to anticipate problems, to prepare for what could go wrong. That's why many Gen Zers seem to have an almost uncanny ability to spot trouble before it arrives. They're not necessarily pessimistic. They've simply spent their entire lives running mental simulations because experience taught them they had to. But there's another side to the story. Gen X grew up watching adults preach values they didn't always follow. They heard endless talk about loyalty, commitment, and doing the right thing. Then they watched divorce rates soar. They watched lifelong employees get laid off after decades of dedication. They saw promises broken again and again. The lesson was hard to ignore. Systems fail. People disappoint. Nothing is guaranteed. So they learn to expect the best while preparing for the worst. Not because they're cynical. Because history taught them to. And that's one reason many Gen Zers never fully embraced social media. It's not that they don't understand technology. In many ways, they helped create the digital world we live in today. The difference is that they remember life before constant exposure. A time when embarrassing mistakes faded away instead of living forever online. To them, privacy feels valuable. Protection feels smart. So they watch. They observe. They stay informed. But they rarely feel the need to broadcast every detail of their lives. Then there's their signature defense mechanism: humor, sarcasm, irony. Nothing seems too serious. Everything becomes a joke. But underneath that humor lies something deeper. This was the generation raised during the Cold War. They practiced nuclear drills in school. They were told the world could end at any moment, while adults insisted everything was perfectly fine. Living inside that contradiction taught them to laugh at things that were terrifying, to keep emotional distance, to stay guarded, because caring too much sometimes felt dangerous. Yet despite all of this, Gen X developed one of the strongest work ethics of any generation. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. They don't post motivational speeches about hard work. They simply show up and get things done. Many started working young, delivering newspapers before sunrise, bagging groceries, working cash registers, taking responsibility long before adulthood officially arrived. And because they watched companies abandon loyal employees, they learned something important. Don't depend on loyalty. Depend on competence. Make yourself valuable. Become the person nobody wants to lose. That's the mindset many carried into adulthood. There's also a fascinating paradox at the heart of Gen X. They're incredibly independent, yet surprisingly loyal. They hate asking for help. But when someone else needs help, they're often the first to show up. No announcements. No social media posts. No need for recognition. Just action. Because for many of them, friendships became family. And loyalty became one of the few things they truly trusted. Their relationship with authority is equally unique. Gen X respects competence, not titles. If you know what you're doing, they'll respect you. If you don't, no fancy title in the world will impress them. They grew up watching scandals, political failures, corporate betrayals, and leaders making disastrous decisions. So they learned an important lesson early. Being in charge doesn't automatically mean you're right. Economically, they were hit again and again. Recessions, market crashes, corporate downsizing. Financial uncertainty became a recurring theme throughout their lives. That's why many Gen Zers believe in having backup plans. Multiple skills, multiple income streams. Not because they're obsessed with success. Because experience taught them that stability can disappear overnight. The downside? Many struggle to ask for support. Research consistently shows that Gen X is less likely to seek help during stressful times. Not because they lack support systems. Because they were conditioned to handle everything themselves. It's a strength. But sometimes it's also a burden. Their relationship with information is different too. Before Google, knowledge required effort. You spent hours in libraries. You searched through card catalogs. You hunted for answers. Information wasn't instant. It had value because it demanded patience. And maybe that's why so many Gen Zers learn to fix things themselves. A broken bicycle. A malfunctioning TV. A problem at home. Instead of immediately calling for help, they experimented until they found a solution. That mindset created confidence. A belief that with enough patience and persistence, almost anything can be figured out. Today, many of them are raising children in a completely different world. A world of constant connection, endless supervision, and digital visibility. And while they're grateful their children have opportunities they never had, many quietly wonder if something was lost along the way. Because in the Gen X worldview, privacy equals freedom. And independence builds resilience. In the end, Generation X isn't better than any other generation. They're simply the product of a unique moment in history. A generation that grew up between two worlds. One foot in the analog age, the other in the digital future. They're the bridge generation. And bridges rarely get celebrated. They don't ask for attention. They don't demand recognition. They simply keep holding everything together. And honestly, that might be the most Gen X trait of all. Doing the work. Expecting nothing. And moving forward whether anyone notices or not. Generation X never asked for attention. They simply showed up, solved problems, and kept moving forward. Maybe that's why they're often overlooked. Not because they had nothing to say, but because they never felt the need to prove anything. If this gave you a new perspective on Generation X, share your thoughts below. And if you're curious about the psychology behind people and generations, stick around for more.